You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Minutes, 21 seconds. 5-second tone followed by a 1-second pause.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe.
Okay, gang, let's go.
From the space city called Houston, Texas, welcome to Spaceboy Universe, featuring Spaceboy and the lovely Surlana. So strap in and prepare for launch sequence.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the universe. I am Spaceboy of Spaceboy Universe, and across from me is the lovely Surlana. Trust me, she's over there. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. That's at the SB Universe. Follow Surlana at Surlana. Follow me, Spaceboy, at Spaceboy Music. And of course, follow the network that brings you all this fine programming, and that's at the SBU Network. As always, you can hashtag your tweets with hashtag SB Universe and hashtag Space Cadets. Speaking of those Space Cadets, you can hang out with them by going to spaceboyuniverse.com. Click on the dance and chat bubble in the player, and that'll get you in with all the cool kids. In addition to Twitter, you can find the universe on Facebook, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. Just look for Spaceboy Universe. Speaking of YouTube, you can find more than the Spaceboy archive of shows. That's right. There is video content from Spaceboy music, video interviews, 2-Bit Gamers, and so much more. Become a subscriber. It's your duty as a Space Cadet to do so. Let's see, whatever. Can't catch a show live? No problem. You can also go to some of those same places and take SBU on the go with you, like Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iTunes, because, man, we have nothing better to do than to broadcast this show. So, on that magical note, I turned to the lovely Surlana, and I asked her the weekly question of, how are you tonight?
I am not how I expected to be. He's keeping me muted because of the sniffling and the coughing and the sneezing.
And the oil flavor.
Like that. I did not expect to be like this because I had gotten over whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been to work all week. I get up Friday morning. I'm like, a little sniffling, sneezy, whatever, Get up, go to work. I'm there 2 hours, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going home.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had gone home until I was heading home 5 o'clock. And wait, it doesn't sound like you're driving.
I sent you a text, didn't I?
No, you didn't.
I thought I sent you a text.
No, you didn't. But I mean, it's not like I'm not your keeper, I guess, and I'm not trying to.
There's only two places I'm going to be at work or at home, so it's not like it's a mystery.
Well, I found a few clues along the way where you stopped on your way back home. And but other than that, I just didn't know. Sometimes I'm concerned.
Actually, my in our chat, Catalina, one of our loyal space cadets, is asking us, "Is it the environment we're in?" I said, "Well, we did go abruptly from winter to, I guess this is spring. Then we go to like 45 degrees to 78 degrees in one day."
Well, that is a very good question. I'm glad you asked that, Catalina.
Plus, she's got a part two.
Because I recall something I was thinking of prior to, why are we so, been so sick? This all started, like at the end of December. And, I think I'm getting a little bit better. But some of my conclusions are, when we had all that rain, I'm sure it stirred up a lot of crap, if you will, and that kind of stayed in the Houston area, And with the and then you compound that with the wacky weather we've had.
This is I mean, since the hurricane, it has been whack, totally whack.
Crack is whack.
That too.
Mm-hmm.
She's asking me, do I have something environmental in my office? You know, that is entirely possible because the building I am in is a historical building. It used to be a train depot. The train runs underneath one edge of this building I'm in. It doesn't stop there anymore. It just runs through. But so yes, there was asbestos in this building, but they've done years of remediation to get it out, I think. But I think it's possible there could be some mold. We've had roof leaks. They've done roof construction. We had a fire break out because of roof construction. It wasn't anything major, but they still made us go home, which was kind of cool. But
well, because your building is practically sitting on the bayou.
It is. It's surrounded by 3 sides of a bayou.
The flooding, came up. What would you say? Close to the first floor?
It went all the way into the first floor and
did.
ruined everything on the first. Now you've seen this place. You've been there.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite a feat to get to the first floor because it's up,
right,
way up on a kind of a hill. So it's entirely possible that stuff crept up. But we're talking that's the first floor, and I am on the 10th floor. That's the top floor. So I don't know how feasible that is.
Well, the way you described, they ripped out the sheetrock. They put in CFMs. I'm very familiar with
on that first floor
the process because I used to work for a remedial company. Remedial.
It screwed up one of the elevators real good too.
Well, I can imagine. The flow of the current of that water, and then let's put it this way. Buffalo Bayou is not the sweet smelling.
On any given day, it stinks like sulfur, like hell. Like, the shores of hell, you'd imagine. 'Cause the rotten egg smell. Mm-hmm. I guess because it's stagnant, maybe?
Yes, stagnant. And then, everything's running to this point. Everything from up, it's kind of like towards the end. Not necessarily end, because it still goes all the way out to the Houston Ship Channel.
Does it? Mm-hmm. Which it goes to the Gulf, I'm imagining.
Yep. Our brown water
Can't think where it starts, though. It's
more than just dirt. So, basically, you've got all that crud, that could have infected your work business place. And, that plays into a part of it, too. But then you have to factor all that, and then you factor all the fact that this season's flu season has been one of the more extremes on record. We have not had the flu. What we've been experiencing, at least I can speak for myself, has been the acute sinusitis, and that's played in a lot. But more recently, I feel like I'm making some progress as that my sinuses aren't clear anymore. They're kind of glopping up, and I'll take glop up versus runny nose any day of the day because that means you're not getting the post nasal drip.
I thought,
and you're
I sneezed my brains out today. I was like, I sneezed and went, oh, I don't know what that is. Hope I don't need it.
It looks like a kumquat, So,
but I mean, it's as much as I'm complaining about this. The last time we were. We missed a show. We had to cancel a show. It was way better. I mean, it was way worse. I'm okay compared to that time. I'm all right. I mean, I'll make it.
What's your assessment of me?
I don't know what's going on with you, if you're getting better or not. I can't. Maybe you've just got a better attitude about it.
Well, I mean, I know that there's been several people say, "Are you okay? You look so.
Oh, you pale.
You look pale.
Well, we don't go out. We're nerds. We don't go outside.
No, but I think I understand what they're saying. Usually,
it's winter.
I have a sparkle in my eye and a smile, and
That's probably because work has killed it.
Well, that is true.
And I'm pretty sure nobody at your work listens to this show, so.
Oh, I don't know. There might be one or two when they get want to see what's up with Jim kind of thing, So it is what it is. So let's see here. I'm sorry, bear with me here. I'm trying to get back to Spreaker so I can say howdies to all the space cadets. But
excuse me.
So you were going to bring up Nintendo.
Oh, I was just saying, I've seen all those videos like on YouTube or wherever about the is it Labo? Labo?
Where they're taking the cardboard stuff?
You take the 2 controllers off your Nintendo Switch and you attach it to wherever, you build out these little cardboard pieces they give you and you interact with it, and they say it's just magical. You can make a little piano, you can make a fishing rod, you can make a jet backpack, and it'll all interact with, I guess, their games or whatever. It just looks like fun, innovative. You know what it looks like? It'd be perfect for the Maker Faire crowd, for the young kids.
I could see that. Now, here's my thing is, one, how much does this stuff cost?
I know.
Because, let's face it, kids in general, they're going to tear stuff up. And, if the dollar amount on some of these things is a little outrageous, then I can't see I personally, if I had kids, I would not buy this for them. I mean, because, I guess I have this thing. If they want to make something, it's great. Let's make it. If you want to put it up on a shelf, that's great. But to be able to interact with this on a constant basis, it's going to tear. It's going to break down.
You haven't held it in your hands.
It's not meant to, I wish I had a drum set with the cymbal. But anyway, so I don't think that this product would hold up over time. And that's why I think that even though it's innovative, I just would not buy it.
Well, you don't have to because we don't have kids, and that saves us a ton of money.
The thing is, even with kids, even without kids, I still wouldn't buy it me personally because it's not something that I could see, it's not, I don't think it's worth it.
Well, it's not marketed at you anyway.
Thank you for keep tearing it down for me. So, anyway, so I wouldn't buy it.
All right.
But that's not to say that it's not innovative and interesting, and the maker community could, be into that. And I mean, I think it's great because you get people creating something and then using their video game console for something different than what is normally just look at a screen and use the remote control. So,
well, you don't have to take our word for it, like for everything, Go check it out yourself, see what you think. Look at some trailers for this product, the Nintendo Labo.
Hey, there are 2 birthday wishes we want to send out today. Earlier this week, the Uber Space Cadet, as he's known as, K28's birthday was this past week. And we want to wish him the biggest Spaceboy and Surlana
that we can while we're sick.
And happy birthday, K28. You are the ultimate space cadet, and we love the heck out of you. And someday I'll watch W. I just don't know when, but that's a different thing altogether. And which in honor of tonight is kind of a replay, but we're going to be behind the scenes, chatting it up with you behind the scenes, which is cool because we like to hang with you, Space Cadets. We're rebroadcasting our interview with Mark Johnson. Today is his birthday, and he's out there living it up with his wife and having a good time. But in honor of his birthday tonight, we're going to be rebroadcasting our interview with him. And as many of you know, we're on the PAUK Radio Network. And we couldn't have gotten there without Mark. So it was this interview that really kind of introduced us to Mark, and then he got us hooked into Irene. And you know how these domino things affect. Next thing we know, we're on the PAUK Radio Network. And once again, thanks, Mark. Happy birthday. And, and then plus it's just going to be a great chance to hear our interview on the PAUK Radio Network that Mark graciously did right before we're on your network. So there you go. So
that was a good interview.
Yeah, it was a good interview. And it went quick. It was one of those interviews that was like, he's a very interesting person to talk to about the subject matter. And I think that it'll be great to replay that. So what else you got over there, Solana?
Well, I got some good news for women like me.
Good news, everyone.
Cell phone radiation poses no real harm to humans, new research says. And if you're like me that likes to store the cell phone in your bra because it's just more convenient there, and some days you don't have pockets, apparently you don't have to worry. But now what they said was male rats showed a small increase in a kind of heart tumor after exposure to massive amounts of cell phone radiation. But they say don't read too much into that because they were bathing in more radiation than even the heaviest cell phone users would ever get exposed to.
Yeah, I get this impression that they're like literally sticking the phone right in their face,
or elsewhere.
Here.
So the worries have always been, cell phones are going to give you cancer, brain cancer, or wherever it's near. Now they do emit a radiation, but it's a radio frequency what is popping? Radiation that is lower than the ionizing radiation you would get from X-ray or a nuclear fallout. Ionizing radiation can cause DNA damage that will lead to cancer, but what's coming from your cell phone is a radio frequency radiation, and it doesn't work like ionizing radiation. So they exposed male rats to very high levels, and the radiation grew tumors around their hearts. Female rats exposed to this radiation didn't. And neither male nor female mice showed obvious health problems in a second study. So, the FCC limits how much radiofrequency radiation can come out of your cell phone, and the FDA says those limits are safe. Now, this is coming from our government, so I'm wondering if we should take that with a grain of salt. Maybe it's just saying that because, they could kill us off faster if they pretend it's easier. So, now, specifically they used G2 and 3G frequencies. Not the 4G or 5G. Now, that would be more concerning to me because we're doing 4G here, you and I. They expose the rodent's entire bodies to radio waves for 9 hours per day up to 2 years. Now, that's a lot. That is a lot. So, you can't extrapolate that to cell phone usage that humans use. So, even with these high levels of exposure, the links to cancer were still mostly equivocal or ambiguous. The rats exposed to cell phone radiation actually appear to live longer than the ones that weren't. Who knows what that means? So, if you got to tuck it in your bra, ladies, it's probably going to be okay. Just so you know.
All right.
And I got more if you need it.
Yeah, we'll continue. What else you got there?
Brave YouTuber installs the first literal and fast slow lanes for traffic outside the FCC's headquarters. So, we've been living in a world without net neutrality for a month now. And we're going into our second month. And various companies are putting together protests and videos trying to illustrate the issue, including Burger King, which had a rather clever ad explaining it, which I haven't seen yet.
I've seen clips of it.
So, video director Rob Bliss took this another step. With the help of a few traffic cones and some very slow bicycling, he tried to create the first literal and fast slow lanes of traffic outside the FCC's headquarters through his Restoring Automotive Freedom program. So he's embraced Ajit Pai's words about how before net neutrality, innovators transform how billions of people live and work without asking one's permission. Literally blocking the road outside FCC's office. Customers who wanted access to the fast lane could buy a Rob Bliss priority access card for a mere $5 a month, restoring the same freedom of choice that the chairman claims will come with the removal of net neutrality.
I still, I'm totally against government sticking their paws into the private sector's business. I mean, we have not seen this tier thing, this gloom and doom apocalyptic thing.
I think they're just biding their time.
Oh, I'm going to kill Microsoft.
But do you hear that popping noise? Do you have your amp on?
Yeah, it's because my computer is rebooting and it's trying to update, and it's a Windows 10 update that won't work, and I have to literally shut my computer down and then have it restore to a previous state, and man, it just It gets my goat.
Anyway,
But anyway, I was going to say that I'm just told, we haven't seen these lanes being done. I just
give it some time. Give it some time.
What I guess is what I'm trying to say is, Surlana, is that I'm for the government not monitoring or whatever doing. It seems to me that everybody wants the government to keep these regulations stating that you can't do this or you can't do that. The internet worked perfectly fine before this committee came along and started putting their nose into the internet. And granted, I understand what these businesses are coming. I mean, the biggest example of that is Netflix. Everybody is streaming like there's nobody business, and it's only going to get worse because you've got Disney, who's acquired part ownership of Hulu, and they want to do their own streaming service. And you got CBS, who is doing their all access thing, and
excuse me.
You've got these companies that have built the backbone of the whole thing, and they feel to some degree like, hey, we have to regulate this bandwidth because customers are not paying or whatever they need to get their services, and it's being overrun by these other services. But that is only the tip of the iceberg. Recently in the news, the government, speaking of the government coming back around, they want to create the first 5G network. Now, what is it? The government does. And so what that would mean is that the government would be back in the saddle again, controlling who, what, Could you imagine not being able to tweet certain things because the government shuts down those things? See, it's just a big old mess. I think I know where you stand on this net neutrality thing, but...
Anyway, let me get back to this, because I wasn't done.
Okay, go ahead, and I'll fix the poppy.
Now, unfortunately, the Washington, D.C. police and Homeland Security don't agree with Mr. Bliss's protest by making these literal, physical, fast and slow lanes. So they said, hey, you got to quit doing that. So they restored the unthrottled access to the road. As a general reminder, it's a good idea to obey local laws and not antagonize the cops and national security. So they say, slowing down traffic and slowing down internet traffic is not necessarily a perfect one-on-one analogy, but he was trying to make a point that paid prioritization is bad, and when people block lanes, they should be told to stop. So I get what he was trying to do.
But I mean, it's kind of like, when I look at that stuff, it's like, ooh, you can stomp your toe if you're running around barefooted in the house, or sure, there's a possibility that could happen, but there's a big possibility it's not going to happen. So that's what you okay with her?
I'm just waiting for you to.
Okay, get through my thought. So that's how I look at it.
Sometimes I just need to look up the ceiling while you're talking.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, are you looking at the ceiling thinking, I wished I was at a star far away from this conversation?
You're going to be cough, stop it.
Yeah, so if here's the image I have, Chicken Little looking at the sky, and then of course, if many of y'all have seen pictures of our
ceiling
studio,
is interesting.
I mean, the ceiling looks like more of the space, When I say space, like the outer space.
That's what you get for looking at me.
So I don't know. I worry about you sometimes.
Well, I am sick.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I was worried. I thought, part of the brain might have shut down or something.
Oh, it's making my eyes sting.
So,
anyway, get this, babe. Get this, okay?
Okay, I'm listening.
Logan Paul gets on Good Morning America. It talks about his controversial video. He says it was intended to show the harsh realities of suicide. I call bullcrap.
I would second that motion. All those in favor? Because look, listen to repeat what you just said.
Let me read the actual headline for you.
Yeah.
This is from TheVerge.com. Logan Paul tells Good Morning America his controversial video was intended to show the harsh realities of suicide. I think he backtracked to cover his butt I think he's an idiot who's trying to get views.
So here's my thing.
No morals.
Here's my thing. Does it actually sound like him, or does it sound like a press release that somebody's
Logan Paul's continuing his apology tour following that highly criticized video of a dead body that he showed. The idea was to shock and show harsh realities of suicide to get people talking about something that I don't think people are talking about much. Bullcrap.
Mm-hmm.
They planned to camp for the night and make an entertaining piece of content in the forest. And shortly after they entered the forest, they saw the body of a man hanging who hung himself. Now, the problem is he struggled to suppress laughter and cracks a few jokes, and he had a clear disregard for the whole somber legacy of the forest, they're saying here in this article. So
that video doesn't show him.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm like, well, people deal with grief and, shock in the same way. I'm like, if you're laughing at a dead body, you need to get some therapy.
Mm-hmm.
That ain't right, And you could tell me I'm not right for saying it. Go ahead, tell me. I don't care. I'll debate you on it. So he said millions of people literally telling me they hate me or to go die in a fire. It's the most horrible, horrific things. Well, now you get the idea that something's horrible. He's like, I'm a good guy who made a bad decision. So he had, this is like, his apology tour. He returned to the internet on the January 24th with a video called Suicide, Be Here Tomorrow, which is a PSA for anyone having suicidal thoughts. And he did donate $1 million to suicide prevention. And I'm like, well, would he have done that had he not gotten in trouble?
Mm-hmm.
So,
like I said, you confirm what I said. It's Boulder Dash. So, I'm not buying it. It sounds like somebody is trying to help him with like a press release, and it doesn't sound like it's him. It sounds like, somebody's telling him what to say. And obvious so. He's generated millions of dollars of income for himself, and he pretty much shot himself in the foot. And it is what it is. Hey, so we're getting close to the bottom hour. I'm just trying to watch time here. I wanted to throw this one. Hackers are exploiting a new Adobe Flash vulnerability to take control of Windows PC's technology.
Not for much longer, though.
Mm-hmm.
They've got one more year to do that crap, and then it's done.
Yes, I am so ready for that to be over.
2020, Flash dies officially.
Hey, this week in history, Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow, so that means there's going to be several more weeks of winter. So congratulations if you love it cold.
We might get 3 more days. Who knows?
Who knows? Let's see here. And Nintendo is thinking about making a Mario movie. And guess who's going to be doing it? It's going to be the creators of the Minions.
Oh,
yeah. So we could see a Mario movie, animated thing like the Minions movie, and that could be coming out. And of course, I said, "It's a me, banana." Anyway, so and then of course, Star Trek news. I got into the Discovery. I know we've made a long way to get to this point. If you'd asked me about a year ago if I was going to watch the show,
you'd be like,
nope.
I'm not watching it. Yay!
So, but the reality is that there's 2 more episodes left in this season. And man, these last several episodes have been nice because they're really tying up the storyline. But now they're at the point where I could see why they went all nuts over the thing with Axanar. Mm-hmm. And because where the story is on the Discovery is you have the Klingons, and they're pretty much pushed the Federation to a point where they're almost defeated them, and that was very similar to the Axanar story, where eventually they come back with new technology and kick the Klingons back to where they belong. And sorry, Dr. Pepper moment. And so,
Ow.
it's been really, I didn't know I could, just say Dr. Pepper moment and you start laughing at me?
No, never mind.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
So also on, I guess some more news here. Diane Lane and Greg Kinnear join House of Cards, the final season. So they're actually going forward on House of Cards.
They don't need what's his face, do they?
No, they won't need Kevin Spacey, but
For what you were telling me.
yeah, because the focus should be shifting towards, and I can't think of her name.
She's in Princess Bride.
Right, and so she
As a
will be the focus of the show, and of course they haven't really said what Grey Kinnear's character is going to be because they've kind of kept his part kind of mysterious and unknown. And then let's see, I just want to say, Black Dynamite star Michael J. White teases Black is Back sequel. That's going to be cool to see. And then finally, I want to just say quickly that Spielberg has already announced that Indiana Jones 5 will be coming out before he does West Side Story. And a lot of people give the Crystal Skull a bad rap, but it is a pretty decent movie. I mean, let's face it, it's no Raiders, but it's a good popcorn movie.
I never saw it.
And it's a fun, just kind of go along with the show. And I mean, if you're expecting something more and fantastic and out there to the left or right, don't. Just go in it, eat some popcorn, have a nice beverage, and you'll enjoy the Crystal Skull. So that is the beefs I wanted to say this week. And once again, happy birthday to our good friend K28. We love you, bro, and keep keeping it real. So anything you want to say before we go to break?
No.
Okay, so when we come back, we will be time warping into the past. In fact, we'll be time warping one show before the second season when we brought on Mark Johnson, who's having his birthday today too. And that was a great interview, and we're going to get to replay it. And now all the Space Cadets that are out there, we will be in the chat room chatting it up with you guys. So, don't think that you can leave just like that. Ask us questions behind the scenes, and we will go from there. Other than that, that's all I got to say here. So here we go.
You are listening to Spaceboy Universe on the SBU network.
Explore the universe with Spaceboy and Surlana.
Hi, I'm Spaceboy.
And I'm Surlana.
And you're listening to Spaceboy Universe
on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
I'm from another planet. I'm from another planet.
Give me police headquarters. It's an emergency.
Yes?
Hello, police headquarters?
What's the trouble, young fella?
This is Carter.
Yes? Yes, I know. You saw a little pretty bad.
Okay, gang, let's go. Can you hear me? Answer me. Can you hear me? Answer me.
Mark Johnson has been interested in the paranormal since he was young. He formed his own research group in 2004 and since then has investigated numerous haunted locations throughout the United States. Mark then joined up with Irene Allen Block in 2014 to help run SRI, Supernatural Research Institute. Mark also holds an interest in many other aspects of strange and paranormal, which have made him the perfect choice to co-host Paranormal UK Radio. Mark has appeared on numerous radio and TV shows, including A&E's Paranormal State, the Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America 2, Sci-Fi's Haunted Highways, Living TV's Paranormal Survivor, and in addition, he is the co-owner of Gallant Tie Publishing. Please welcome Mark Johnson.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, the pleasure's all ours. Well, you know, Mark, I have to start by saying that initially how I came across you was that I had done music for Solaris Blue Raven in her new book, and I believe that you put that music to a video, and I thought, wow, that was really cool. And that's the beginning of how I got in touch with you, and we became friends on Facebook. And, of course, you know, I've noticed a few things along the way, how we seem to have a lot of taste in common. So it's worked out really good. And so I guess at some point I thought, you know, I'd really like to get Mark on the show. And here you are. And we really appreciate you taking the time out in your busy schedule of all the ABCs of 1, 2, 3s of what you do out there.
Yeah, I got many brands in the fire these days.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mark. I mean, tell the Space Cadets a little bit. I mean, we did a little brief bio, but, you know, it goes a long way with what you could tell us.
Okay. Well, let's see. I've been a paranormal investigator for about 17 years now. I was living in New Jersey when I first started. I had... You know, as I mentioned, I've always been interested in the paranormal, kind of dabbled with it as a kid. I caught my first EVP in the early 80s, and that was back before they even coined the term EVP. Mm-hmm. But I really didn't get into it until I moved to New Jersey, and I started living in this house that turned out to have some paranormal activity. And after a while... I was hearing my name being called, feeling weird presences at night, and I even started experiencing, sleep paralysis, which is the first time in my life I've ever experienced that. So I called a local group, and they came in and investigated, and it turns out I started investigating with them, and I was hooked. So I joined them, worked with them for a few years, and then in 2004, formed my own group, New Jersey Paranormal Research, and we were active for 10 years in the state. And after a while, things, you know, how groups tend to do, some people start going their separate ways. Mm-hmm. And my focus really started to shift away from traditional paranormal research. I wasn't satisfied with it. Not with the way that so many groups form, and, you know, thankfully we had the opportunity to form and be active before the television shows came out. Before Ghost Hunters and Paranormal State and all these other shows who, you know, warped young minds to think they could go out and become paranormal investigators and think that that was the way to do it. And I wasn't satisfied with the fact that so many groups, and even ours was guilty of it, of going into homes and whatnot, investigating, picking up paranormal activity, and not really doing anything to help. You know, what were we helping? Okay, yeah, in many cases we could show them, yes, there's some activity going on, you're not crazy, or if we could debunk it, show them how it was, but we'd still never get to the root of the problem, you know, which is what's going on there. And we worked on several cases, some of them long-term, that really started to change my mind on a lot of the research. One case in particular in Bloomingdale, New Jersey, where we had two houses on the same street, and pretty much there were more houses on the street that was having activity, but we only had access to two because these women were friends living across from each other. And the activity we started to deal with was not a traditional haunting. It was something attached to the land, and I think was possibly non-human. But we didn't know enough back then. And we didn't have psychics working with us, and I've tried working with a few psychics who, after a while, none of them impressed me at all. I think that they believed their own hype in trying to sell themselves. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we really didn't have somebody we could bring in and trust to come in and tell us from a psychic standpoint what we're dealing with, which kind of led me on a path to start working on my own development. Not saying I'm a psychic at all, but just saying becoming more intuitive, picking up on things that are there, learning about new types of phenomena, new types of activity. And then about 6 years ago, I met my business partner, Irene Allen Block. She was running Spirit Rescue International at the time, and by the time we met, that group was going through a change. She's a very talented, and she hates the term psychic. We call her an extrasensor because nobody knows what that means. She likes to be thought of as a very normal person, as a mother, grandmother, pensioner living in the UK. Mm-hmm. And but she has some very strong abilities, or probably the strongest abilities of anybody I've ever worked with. But she's very down to earth about it. But part of what she can do is remote viewing. She was trained by an organization on doing remote viewing back in the 70s and 80s. She's able to use that to help people all around the world. I think the farthest case away she ever worked was down in New Zealand from the comfort of her own home in Wales. And we worked on some cases together, and eventually SRI transformed from Spirit Rescue International to Supernatural Research Institute because, again, we started to broaden our horizons some. She wasn't doing as much as Spirit Rescue, which is basically going into somebody's home and clearing it, moving the things on. She's dealt with very negative cases, what some people would call demonic, but between you and me, I don't believe in demons per se, just very negative things, and she's able to clear that when needed. But now, these days, we're focusing on doing more broader research into a variety of different areas, not just ghosts and the paranormal, but interdimensional types of activities, multidimensional, nature types of spirits, or even nature type of beings, what you can also call ultra-terrestrials. And we found that there's a lot of activity that seems to overlap, different types of activity, like between ghost research, paranormal research, to cryptids, to UFOs and ufology, aliens, high strangeness. There's more of an interconnectedness with this activity than most people realize. And so we've really taken ourselves to studying and looking into all this different types of phenomenon And it's opened up a whole brand new world in terms of research for us.
Okay, well, you touched on a lot of things that we wanted to get into and ask you about. So the first thing is now, when it comes to the large subject matter of paranormal, I am, I guess, what you call a neophyte, a newbie. I'm not as well versed as, the people who are in our chat and maybe, Spaceboy himself. So it's all a huge mystery to me. I'm not saying it isn't possible, but it's a very big, difficult topic for me to get around. So to start with, your title, Paracrypto-ufologist, I've never seen that before, but I guess it encompasses absolutely everything you're into, which I think is I just thought that was a cool title. This covers everything. So.
Yeah, you've never seen it before because I made it up.
We practiced saying it before the.
Yeah, I was singing supercalifragilistic.
We practiced saying
and I will admit you've done a fantastic job of pronouncing it. It's paracrypto-ufologist, and I tell people try to say that 5 times real fast. Mm-hmm. So it's because my interests personally have broadened to include all sorts of different types of activity. And the one thing that I've had the advantage of doing a radio show like yours. I did one show for 5 years, Unknown Origins Radio. Mm-hmm. We were on a couple of different stations with KGRA. We were on Art Bell's not Midnight Desert, but Dark Matter digital network. Mm-hmm. And then when that show ran its course, Irene and I formed Paranormal UK Radio to kind of bring in more of a British audience. Yes. Because there's so many great researchers and things happening that related to the UK that don't get played as much here in the US. Now, our show is actually, we play it in the UK, in the US. We hit all the time zones. And we try to get a variety of different guests, both in the, all around the world, to talk about things. And in doing so, I have learned so much from so many great people, these great guests who come on and the research that they've done. And it's changed my paradigm, really. And I've also been on my own spiritual quest for many years and learning things from a non-traditional standpoint. And looking into things, everything from, shamanism, Native American types of religion and philosophy about spirits, that when you start looking at the Aboriginal cultures around the world, whether it's Native American, South American, Australian, even in Europe before Christianity took hold, these beliefs and practices that predated Christianity and were much closer not only to the earth but to the forces, the energy forces around, where they could call them spirits or whatnot, but it was really things that they interacted with more closely than we do now in a Western society. And it brings up a lot of interesting cases and things to look into. One thing, now that I've been in Colorado for the past year, being here in the West, there's a lot of mines and caves, and one thing that I am looking into investigating is the stories of things that live under the earth in caves and mines. The miners used to call these beings Tommyknockers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
But there's also researchers like Barry Fitzgerald, from formerly with Ghost Hunters International, him living in Ireland, and he's done a lot of research looking into the Celtic Shay or fairy lore. And the fact that with these fairy mounds, there's also things underground in these old mines and caves related to the Celtic fairy lore. And it started me thinking about there's cultures all around the world that have similar stories of these types of entities that seem very paranormal, possibly spirit-like, and yet not. They do seem to be physical at times and interact with people in this world. And they go by many names, everything from fairies to gnomes, trolls. In Norway you have trolls. You have the fairies in Ireland. Down in Cornwall, the pixies. Irene always tells me, don't forget the Cornish pixies. Icelandic elves. The Middle East have the jinn. And, it's funny if in Iceland, which is a very popular spot for Hollywood movies these days, they film a lot of movies there, they have to perform ceremonies to appease the elves so that they don't mess around with the camera equipment and screw things up and hurt their movie shoot. They have to, and it works, because when they haven't done it, they have problems during the shoot. Everything from camera equipment breaking, weird weather, it's just all strange. But if they appease the elves, then they have a good, smooth movie shoot. The Icelandic government takes it seriously enough that they'll divert highways around these mounds where the elves are thought to live.
That reminds me of that old Bugs Bunny cartoon where they had some little creature messing with a plane and, wreaking havoc with
the gremlins.
Yep,
the gremlins. It's the same kind of concept. In mines, and the miners, even going all the way back to the Welsh miners, that's where the lore of the Tommyknockers started. And of course, in the 1800s, all those European miners and people came out over here, and they were mining everywhere for gold and silver. And they brought those legends and lore with them, and they would talk about the Tommyknockers, where they'd be making sounds down deep in the mines and caves. People would hear their names being called. You'd get some that were mischievous that could chip away at the timbers. Others seemed helpful, warning people of dangers. And again, these things take on very human-like characteristics because some seem to be good or have benign intents, and some have, negative intents. Just like you run into people. You don't know whether to trust them or not until they can prove themselves. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's a fascinating subject and something that I'm currently looking into. I recently did an investigation here last month up in Idaho Springs at the Phoenix Gold Mine. Now, this location was featured last year on an episode of Ghost Adventures. And unfortunately, the owner and the employees at the mine weren't very impressed with what happened in the episode. Excuse me. But in some ways, when I heard the whole story, they were kind of blaming Zach and kind of saying some things about the production crew. But in reality, they had a guy who worked at the mine that purposely gave the guys bad information, and it made it on TV. And you can't control something like that. If you show up at a location to investigate and somebody tells you a story, about somebody was a warlock and practicing black magic in the mine, you're doing a TV show, they're going to run with that. And then later it turns out it was total BS because the guy was screwing with them and wanted his fame. Well, they fired him after that. He no longer worked there after that episode, but still it brought a bad taste to the experience for them. But when I was in there investigating, and I was in there by myself with one of the guides who's also a miner and an investigator, and we had activity all night long between hearing voices deep down in the mine. And it's not like the mine goes on forever. It goes back about a few hundred yards and dead ends. But you're still hearing voices back there. And the mine's closed. We're the only people in there feeling sensations. And this is where one of the things that I'm trying to do is develop my own intuition to be able to feel things more. Equipment and, audio equipment and video equipment, night vision, full spectrum. I even have the Kinect system. I've made one myself. Thermal imaging. It's all great, and it's good tools to capture something to look at later. But sometimes you got to feel what's going on there, and your body will give you signals to tell you when things are around if you pay attention to it. And that night it really worked for me because I was sensing several times when there were presences around. We had an angry presence around us at one point. Felt like a miner. He didn't like us being there. He wanted us to leave. He wasn't being very happy and was putting off a lot of negative energy. Ran into him a couple of times, but then later in the night, his energy changed, and it went from anger to sadness. I felt remorse coming from him. And what I was feeling was he was sad because he knew he had died, and he didn't get a chance to say goodbye to his family. But he was still there in the mind. I had a thought about trying to cross him over, but the mine employee I was working with is adamant that he's never going to make any of those guys leave. Okay. I didn't want to make them upset by crossing over their ghost, but so I kind of left it alone at the time. But we felt that, and then another time later in the night, I felt another presence, a very strong presence, and it did not feel human. It wasn't malevolent in any way. It was just strong and there, to the point where we were feeling an icy wind coming out of this one drift, this tunnel that dead ends, and there's no gaps or cracks or portals going outside, so there should be no airflow coming through this blocked off tunnel because the portal's behind us. And yet an icy wind came through, and it was so cold we were seeing our breath, and my nose was freezing up. So something was letting us know it was there.
Do you ever get afraid in situations, or you've been doing this long enough to know everything will be okay?
You know what? I don't get afraid. I'm curious. I'm the guy that if I heard something or whatever, or saw something, I'm running towards it, not away from it. Because I want to know. It's not like a bravery thing. It's just that I have such a curious mind. I just want to know. What is it? What is that? What can I experience? What's going on? There have only been a couple of times in the years I've been investigating where I've gotten, I don't want to call it afraid. It's an anxiety. And usually I get that when something is working on me to get me to leave. It's messing with my body and causing my heart to race. It's like a sudden anxiety coming up, and you start to become uncomfortable and you want to leave an area. And that's a manufactured feeling that what these things are trying to do is get you to leave. And you can fight it and not let it have its way. Now, that's not to say I don't get creeped out sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I can get a little creeped out. I'm a guy, I can go down into a basement with no lights on and sit down there by myself and usually not bother me. But I also remember I did an investigation once at Rolling Hills Asylum in Bethany, New York, which is an awesome location. And, having to walk down a long, dark hallway by myself to go pick up a camera, you get a bit creeped out.
Well, your own brain can do things to you without any external force to get you, kind of get you going. That's why I stay out of places like that, because I'm more afraid of possibilities, like homeless people who are not all there mentally, things that could actually happen more than things that are not, solid.
Crazy people dressed as clowns.
Yes.
Oh my God! You know what? I saw the It movie, and
you did.
It's like, and I'm looking at the Pennywise the clown. I'm sitting there going, I would have knocked that thing out in a heartbeat. No, not scary to me at all. You know, the Ray Brower kid, the mean kid, he scared me a hell of a lot more than that clown did.
Well, I listened to about the backstory of the it creature, and some about it's really an alien from another time, and like back from the center of the universe or something like that, and it can shape shift and produce, hallucinations.
If you've never read the book, actually, you know what? It's not a very good book. King wrote it when he was whacked out on cocaine. It's 1,000-something pages long, and it could have been half that length. And it was an okay book, but it was literally all over the place.
Mm.
And scary clowns, creepy clowns scare the heck out of everybody these days. But you know what? I don't find things like that scary. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that. It's like, you're right. It's the living scare me more than the paranormal.
Well, we're about to come to the break, and I want to propose something for you before we go to the break, and when we come back, we'll discuss. Is that how do you balance between wanting to know, that I call it the Mulder-Scully effect, between wanting to know and having a healthy dose of skepticism. So don't answer that just yet. So let's go ahead and take our break. You're listening to Spaceboy Universe. I'm Spaceboy, and Surlana's across from me. And on the phone, we have the wonderful Mark Johnson. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Spaceboy Universe, the #1 broadcast for robots. We're back, and we're glad you're tuned in tonight. Tonight, we have our guest, Mark Johnson, para-crypto-ufologist. Say that 5 times fast. Booyah! So, before we went to break, Mark, I had proposed something to you. How do you balance between, the healthy dose of skepticism versus the I want to believe, and to try to make a case solid in when you do your investigations?
It's a fine balance, because what's the old saying? It's good to have an open mind, but not so open that your brains fall out. But see, I came from a background where I was I believed in the paranormal, and I believed that so many things happen to people. Doing so many investigations and having personal experiences, you still always have that healthy skepticism. And, I've dismissed evidence where I'll hear something, and then let's say you're reviewing some audio recordings, and you hear something in the background, and it sounds like a great EVP, but one thing I'll do is start, okay, when did this happen? Where is everybody? And more times than I hate to admit, you find out that it's one of your crew members, or even worse, yourself, and you didn't realize you were talking, or you did something, and it was contamination. So you have to throw it out. So you really have to be aware of your surroundings. And also, depending on the location, and this is why I don't do private homes as much as I used to, because the last few years, I was getting so discouraged because everybody was convinced they had a demon in their house, and everybody had watched too many paranormal TV shows. Or then you find out that this one case, they wanted to write a book on what was happening, that their son was being oppressed and actually possessed, and that the church had to perform an exorcism on him. And when you start reading into it and doing more research, you find out not only was there no exorcism, they prayed over him once, and mostly to appease the parents who wouldn't shut up about it. And the fact that the kid wasn't possessed, he was a brat going through puberty. and the mother who was on California Psychics every day. And, that's where skepticism comes in, because you need to weed out the crazies. The people who want to believe so badly that they'll make stuff up, or they'll jump at shadows and are convinced that there's something demonic going on in their house. And this is something I tell, a lot of the clients I work with. First of all, if you think it's a demon, it's probably not. And I will admit, in the 17 years I've been working in the paranormal, I've never worked a demonic case, because they're that rare. And now I know people like John Zaffis, who he's worked plenty of demonic cases. John's a really great guy. In fact, I helped them once. I got him a case for the Haunted Collector show. And this is where my falling out with Sci-Fi and Pilgrim Films came in, because, I know Brian Cano personally, and he wanted to interview me because I investigated this location. Sci-Fi Channel came to me looking for cases, and I gave it to him, and yet this is my little rant against Hollywood, the television shows, is the Sci-Fi Channel refused to have me interviewed because I'm a paranormal investigator. They have a standing order. All throughout Ghost Hunters, you'll notice after the first 2 years of the Ghost Hunters TV show, they didn't interview other paranormal investigators anymore, or people. They started working with some local teams, and then that stopped. Why? Because Sci-Fi came out with an edict saying that they will not promote any other paranormal teams except their own, to make them look like the experts. So when they wanted to interview me, they found out I'm an investigator. Nope, we can't do that. No, we can't have another paranormal investigator on there. So I was a little tweaked. about that. But you get somebody like John Zaffis, who's a demonologist. Now, let me tell you something. This is just my personal opinion. People can disagree with me, but you want to know what happens when you're a demonologist? You find demons.
That's what you say. You see demons, right?
I was going to say, you open Pandora's box. Yep. You're going to get a can of whoop ass on you.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Like I said, I like John. He's a great guy, and I've listened to his lectures. But it's not just John; it's other people. I've known people who become demonologists. It's okay. First of all, you're making a few assumptions here. First of all, you're assuming that there are demons as like the kind that are in the movie The Exorcist and that are talked about in certain religions. Okay. I don't believe in those. I believe that there are some entities or some forces that can be very negative and nasty, but are they quote unquote demon from hell? No.
Then what would you call them, Mark? I mean, if they're not demons, I mean, I've always gotten the impression that that the demons that we speak of are more extraterrestrial in nature, and from what I've read,
interdimensional.
Or interdimensional. What say you on that?
They could be. They could be. That's an interesting idea, and I know some people have leaned towards that. The one thing, and again, a lot of it I'm going to put back on my partner Irene and what she and I have learned together. Now, she has worked. While I've never worked a really negative case, she has. And in almost every one of those cases, it turns out to be a human spirit that's causing enough of a problem that, she gets it to leave. Sometimes it's an interdimensional type of entity. There's also what we refer to as, how can I put this? There are some entities that are actually created by thought form entities. You may have heard the term tulpa. If you actually, on the new revival of Twin Peaks, I was a little impressed because they started dealing with quote-unquote tulpas. Not in the right way, but they were dealing with that concept and they used the name. But sometimes what you'll get is a low-level thought form entity that is created out of negative energy, whether intentionally, let's say somebody is dabbling in the occult, they want to hurt somebody else, and they create this thought form from their own energy, and it's made out of negative energy with negative intent, and then they send that out to somebody to cause them some harm, causing illness in their life, or whatever. Or in some cases, these things can form from the natural negativity of us human beings. Because let's face it, we're not the happiest lot sometimes.
So is that different
and
from karma?
Karma is a process of balance. A balance, cause and effect.
Okay.
The thought forms are, if you have enough negativity coming up from people, it can coalesce together into a low-level intelligent entity of itself, in itself. Now, if you create something out of negative energy, what does it need to keep going? Negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So what'll happen is you'll get these things that will attach itself to somebody who's having a problem. Whether they're an alcoholic, they're dealing with depression, they're dealing with whatnot, whatever these problems are that somebody might have, these things will come into someone's life and amplify it dramatically. And it'll start taking on the forms of, what we consider to be a demonic oppression. It starts doing things to scare people. It starts doing things to make them sick or bad behavior or whatnot. And I liken these more to spiritual parasites than I do to anything that's actually evil. Is the mosquito that comes and suck on you, on your blood, evil? No, it's doing just what it's made to do. And in fact, if you look in nature, there is nothing in nature that is inherently good or inherently evil. It just is.
Yeah.
It's mankind and man's philosophies that create good and evil. We look at things and we think something is good, or somebody does something bad to us, then we think that's evil. It just is. And so what these things a lot of times will do is attach itself to somebody and create negative situations, and the more negativity it creates, the more they feed and the stronger they get. And they could even do possession. They could even do, they may even make somebody sick to the point where they die. Now, you'll hear some demonologists say, well, that's the goal of a demon, is to get in you, possess you, and then eventually kill you. No, because then why would it kill you? Because it's cutting off its food supply. It's just sometimes that may be what happens. And if that's what happens, then it moves on to the next. If you take away the negativity, if you take away its food source, it will in time dissipate. Now, energy is never destroyed, but it changes forms. So that negativity would, if it weakens enough over time, it will dissipate and be no more. It just goes off to where, what made it up goes off, and it can no longer hurt anybody.
Is the opposite true? And you said if you have all this negativity, it can form this thought form. But if you have a bunch of the opposite, which is positivity, can it defeat that, or does it create something good?
I think the way to deal with negativity is to cut off its food supply. If you focus on the positive, if you start, there is, while I'm not religious myself, there is benefits for the power of prayer. Because if you're praying and focusing on love and light and positive things, then you're cutting off the food supply for the negativity to feed. Now, this can also go towards, it could go towards even human spirits that are causing problems, even some of these non-human spirits, and some of them can be malevolent. But when you get a lot of these demons, and let's say here in the United States or even in Europe, it starts saying it's Satan, or what's popular right now is these Zozo demons or people on the Ouija board, and they get Zozo coming through. And of course, when you hear the name Zozo, what does everybody do? They freak. They freak because, oh my God, it's the Zozo demon, or it knows that will scare the hell out of you, and it says it's the Zozo demon. Do I believe all these people are contacting a Zozo demon? No. I think that these things can and do lie, and I think that they do things for psychological effect in order to increase the negative feelings, in order to gain more energy. So, and even in religious aspects, let's say a Catholic priest comes in and they're spraying holy water on someone who's possessed, and the thing seems to be reacting. And the power of Christ compels you, and it seems to have a reaction. And you would think, well, that's it? It's the religion and God and invoking Jesus is working. Well, not exactly. Not for the reasons people may think. It's because there's two things going on. First of all, if you have a human spirit that maybe does believe in all that when they were alive, they'll have that belief system, that same belief system, and yet could be used to work against them psychologically. Are you going to go into the middle of India, or I'll use India as just an example, or in China somewhere, and somebody is maybe dealing with a demonic type possession, and you're going to start invoking Christ, and these things are going to look at you like you have three heads. Like, what? Who?
Yeah, that's not their culture.
If you use the power of Vishnu, or you use whatever the local culture, that seems to have more of effect, because if these things are regional, then they're going to pick up the things in the culture of that region. There is also something that people don't realize that has zero to anything to do with whoever you're invoking. It's the power of intent. And this is what's really important. From a spiritual standpoint, power and faith in something is strength. You could go in and possibly invoke the flying spaghetti monster, but if you believed it, then your own energy is that strength that could be used to fight these things. You know, as long as you believe in what you're doing. Holy water, you know what happens when you sprinkle holy water around? You get everything wet. Same thing with burning sage. You stink up the joint. Okay? Does sage have any power? No. Holy water have any power? No.
So the belief in it has the power, you're saying.
It is, and this is where, especially in Western culture, people have had all this programmed out of them, where more of the indigenous cultures around the world and are more in tune with spirit and nature and even what's within us. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And our spiritual being, our spirits, and even our higher selves, it's much stronger than we give credit for. You know, organized religion, and again, I'm not bashing organized religion. I'm not bashing anybody's faith. I'm telling you what I believe. You know, everybody can believe what they want to believe. But just from my experience is organized religion takes that away from you. It puts all the power in God or an outside force, and you have nothing yourself, but you have to pray to that outside force. When you really have the power within you, everything is within you. In fact, that's why, you know, a lot of Eastern religions, when they talk about meditation, it's all about going within, because within, in your own higher self, all those answers are there. And that power is there too. And you can tap into that in order to work and fight with some of these things if they're causing problems. My partner Irene, when she goes into these locations and she goes in remotely and she sees what's there, and it might take a few remote views for her to get in, she'll see what's there, and then from there it's a battle of wills. Now, she always wins because she's stubborn as hell, and I know, I work with her. And but it's, you know, again, it's not destroying what's there. It's getting it to leave, pushing it out, getting it to leave on its own, and it goes away. You haven't destroyed it. Could it come back? Well, yeah, especially if people keep doing what attracted it in the first place. But, you know, if you push these things out, get people to start focusing on more positive things, don't do the behaviors that brought it in the first place, like maybe playing with a Ouija board and you don't know what you're doing, and opening that doorway. So focusing on the positivity really helps in those types of situations.
Well, doing that, and just I think everyday life is probably good too. Just do you believe if you put good out there, just in general, that it's just good for the world, the universe, and you'll get it back?
It's cause and effect. You put out what you put out is what you receive. Mm-hmm. If you ever wonder why, and I can speak from this from personal standpoint, if you have the string of bad relationships, why is that? Okay, why are you attracting that to you? What is it within yourself that, whether it's a lack of confidence or if there's something you haven't resolved within yourself, and you keep attracting the same type of people to you? What if you have a habit of getting into abusive relationships? It's because you haven't fixed something in yourself to break that cycle. Mm-hmm. So if you're a negative person, and God knows that we all know these types of people, who all they do is bitch and moan and complain about what's going on in their lives, or they blame everybody else for their problems. They're not taking responsibility. They focus on negativity, and what happens? They tend to make things bad in their lives. And a lot of it is just from a form of perspective, too. The same thing can happen to two people, but if you have a glass is half empty person, they look at it as a bad thing. You have a glass is half full person, they look at it as a positive thing, or maybe a challenge or something to learn. So yes, attitude is everything. And if you tend to try to focus more on the positive in your life and making positive things happen, guess what? They're going to start to happen, because then you start building self-confidence. You start building a positive attitude. And that's still not going to stop bad things from happening in life, because, hey, that's why we're here. It's life. But you'll suddenly find that your attitude on how to resolve the problem and get through it makes it a lot easier to deal with than if you were wallowing in the negative.
Fascinating.
And that's what I think my husband here keeps trying to hammer the point home to me about being
Positive
too negative too often and not allowing possibilities.
I agree with you. And a lot of what you're saying here, Mark, is that, me personally, I've lived life, and, I've had to deal with some pretty tragic and downsides of my life. And to say, am I angry about it? Maybe to some degree, but am I going to put my best foot forward and try to be hopeful for the future? I think that's what needs to be done to squash that negativity, to squash that anger.
You need to do that.
And
you need to put your money where your mouth is.
No, it's a struggle.
It is.
And I mean, okay, Mark, usually I talk to Surlana on my way home. That's probably my worst time dealing with traffic, but and I'm really not myself during that time.
A lot of four-letter words.
So I admit, I get angry at the traffic, but what I'm saying is, as life as a whole, and you will agree to this, Surlana, is that I try to be hopeful in a lot of cases, to put out that positive energy, to like, hey, it may seem dark now, but if we just move a little bit more forward.
And I should stop making fun of you for that too.
And
I really should.
And that's my struggle, is that she takes this cat mentality. You know how cats are. They're just indifference to whatever. But at the end of the day, I guess what I'm saying is that without hope and that positivity, we're just opening ourselves up to the elements out there that will want to possess us and put us down.
Yeah, and our society doesn't help.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to stray too much from our actual paranormal talk tonight, but a lot of it is, the type of society we're living in right now has gotten so negative and so, oh God, I feel like we're living in a nut house, and it's that we're wallowing in negativity. I mean, if these things that we talked about earlier are real, they're going to have a field day feasting on people because of all the negativity that's going on out there right now. And there's very little positive. And that's where, I am not a love and lighter. Okay, I don't go into the hairy-fairy, new agey love and light crap. But at the same time, I will talk about positive feelings. You can use feelings of love to turn some situations around, and if you work on yourself, there's nothing wrong with love and light as a certain concept of how to live your life. But these people who think that, the angels are this and everything's love and light, and it's like they're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses or sticking their head in the sand, because there's still a lot of reality out there too we got to deal with.
Well, we had a terrible situation that the entire city of Houston turned it positive, and it was just like seeing a miracle where people are just, giving and giving and giving and helping. It was just, we're still bragging about it.
Well, here's the thing. Isn't it amazing how it takes a disaster in order to turn people around? What people were doing down there in Houston was phenomenal. Everybody putting aside differences and running down there to help out. Even after 9/11, how everybody was coming together and helping each other. And you know what? It sounds like a terrible thing for me to say this, like I'm a horrible person, but I sometimes think we need more natural disasters or things like this to happen to break us from this cycle of hate and negativity.
Well, we're getting plenty of them, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. Actually, I was talking to a friend today, and the one thing that they don't mention in all of these hurricanes that are coming through is, has anybody paid attention to what the sun is doing this last week or two?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we have had gigantic solar flares that are bigger than anything we ever recorded.
CMEs, yeah.
And if they had been pointing our way, they were planet killers. And yet, the solar activity is spiking in such an the sun has been unusually quiet the last few years. Suddenly, in the last week or so, it's been exploding with these CME events. And it seems to coincide with what's happening with the hurricanes, but yet nobody's mentioning them. They're all talking about the hurricanes and blaming it on, HARP or whatever, what's causing this. And I think what we're seeing is a natural type of weather change. I believe in climate change. Not necessarily global warming, but although we have our own effects on the planet, absolutely, you'd be stupid to not think that we're not having an effect on the weather in this planet. At the same time, the planet has gone through so many changes. We've only been recording the weather, for 150 years?
Mm-hmm. Very short time.
Detailing the weather?
In the span of the universe. Well, hold that thought, Mark. We're at the bottom of the hour, and we'll be right back after this musical interlude.
I tell you, Mark, Spaceboy and I probably need to take some courses at a college on how to be professional broadcasters, because we have this terrible habit of talking to people like you, our guests during the breaks, and all the good stuff is there.
You know, it's been a great show thus far. I mean, we still got a little bit more to go, but I'm just excited you're spending some time with us tonight and the Space Cadets to talk about all this subject matter. And I think, Surlana, you were going to take it from there?
I know you had started in the break talking about we're all just actually energy forms, and I'm wondering if that ties in, and you said, we actually have all this power that most of us are probably not tapping into or even aware of. So I was wondering... and I think that kind of goes all over the topic list I wanted to ask you, but and you can just take this wherever you need to. And with the concept of let's say like alternate realities, time anomalies, people that have experienced time slips, and the ones I've heard about have been fairly mundane activities, when they experience something, but For those of us who are just normal, everyday people who've never experienced anything, do you think, or do you know if it is because we lack the perception to see or glimpse into these other times, realities, or other energies, or is it something physically blocking us? Go.
Okay, well, let's see. When it comes to these ideas of time slips, alternate realities, I think that it's happening around us all the time, and we have it conditioned out of us to ignore it, to explain it away. I mean, what's the thing my mother would always tell me if I'd come to her and I say I heard something or something happened? It's just your imagination. You were dreaming it. Society itself tells you it's not okay to think of these things. And we are taught as young kids and children it's been proven that they are much more connected to the paranormal and the spiritual than we are. And then as they grow, they have it conditioned or beat right out of them. So kids who have imaginary friends, half the time they're dealing with a discarnate spirit or an interdimensional type of being. These things are around us all the time, and this is where I've been changing my focus in terms of what is paranormal. You know what? There really is nothing. There's no such thing as the paranormal.
It's all normal?
It is the normal. It's all normal. We just don't understand it. Mm-hmm. Just like 100 years ago, we didn't understand the effects of radiation. Now we do. We had no idea even how to measure it, let alone that it existed. It wasn't until they detonated the first atomic bomb that they started getting radiation fallout. They didn't even consider that as an effect of using these devices. And then they started studying it in more detail, and we learned about it. But 100 years ago, we didn't know what it was. So it's something that we had to learn. And that's what I'm convinced there's so much going on around us that is very real. Our mainstream science mostly turns a blind eye to it because it threatens their already established paradigms and dogma. I mean, I look at a lot of mainstream science as an organized religion because, God forbid, you go against the grain. There are scientists who lose their careers or are told that if you keep pursuing this, you're going to lose all your funding, you won't be published, you'll be ostracized, and your career is done. Because they want to look into something that's considered fringe or laughable. I mean, science does not want to take into consideration the idea of the spirit. They pride themselves on being super analytical and looking at purely the physical. And there are times now, science is coming a long way in learning about different types of events, with string theory, with the idea of multiple realities, with the idea that time itself is something that we create because our brains are programmed to look at time as linear. when in reality it seems that all time is happening at once. It's only our perception of it.
And that I
makes
can't
it
get my
linear.
head around either.
Yeah,
I don't know how to. I don't know how to conceptualize that.
The time is happening all at one time. Yeah, it makes sense to me.
I already have a headache. That's not helping.
Yeah. Well, here's a good analogy. Let's say you're a two-dimensional being. Okay, you could go front and back. You can go side to side. Those are the only directions you can go to. So that's all you know there is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think to look up. It doesn't exist for you. Or down.
This is like the book Flatland.
You only go in one linear direction is on that thin line, but it doesn't deviate from that. It doesn't go up or down. And that's where a lot of this falls in for us. It's our brains have a hard time with the concept that there's more out there, that the idea of multiple realities are not like up there or below the earth or whatever. They're literally within arm's reach. Mm-hmm. Hold out your arm, and that other reality is like a couple inches beyond your reach. It's right there. It's all around us. And time itself is really wonky. And again, this is what made me look at some things paranormal-wise, ghost hunting-wise, that are way different than people realize. I'm going to give you a perfect example. Okay, let's say you walk into an old building. Let's say you're in the West somewhere. You walk into an old building, and all of a sudden, you see a woman in like 1800s period clothing, walking down the corridor and disappear, and she's kind of see-through, walks down the corridor and disappears. What's your first reaction? I saw a ghost. I saw a ghost. And then when you listen to these ghost hunting shows or some of these other groups, they get into, it's a ghost. They don't know they died, and they're going about their daily business like they always used to, blah, blah, blah. And it's utter rubbish. What I think is happening, and can I prove any of this? Nope. But we can't prove a ghost exists either. So it's one of those things that we're learning and we're going off and looking in new directions. But when I see something like that, I'm going to give a more specific example. My partner Irene, she was with her son, and they were looking at this house that he was going to buy. And she was walking along in the rooms. They walked by this one room, and she walked into a room. Now, again, she's psychic, and she sees spirits a lot anyway. But in this case, she walked into this room, and there's this woman in, like, 1930s period clothing. The woman looked at her. She looked at the woman, and both their mouths dropped. They saw each other. And they were both shocked at what they saw. And then the woman disappeared. Again, are you seeing a ghost? No, I don't think so. I think what you're seeing is two very much living, alive, breathing human beings who happen to see each other. The conditions just happen to be right, where they saw each other through time. Through a rift in time. They're
cool.
both occupying the same space. They're occupying the same space, but they're occupying it at different times. But yet something happened just long enough for them to see each other. And they saw each other, and they both reacted in the same way. And I think that can explain a lot of the apparition sightings that people have.
I wonder what the conditions are that make it happen, though. That's interesting. It's not something we do.
And see, I've always
something the universe does.
What I was going to say is that it kind of something I kind of think in kind of on the subject matter is dealing with the multiverse and basically the idea of all time happening all at once, but taking into account the multiverse, that there's these membranes that are so close to, just like Mark was saying, just reaching out, just out of reach barely, but just next door to us is a universe that's pretty much like ours. And when you think of all these universes, and infinite verses, that is, maybe it was at that time that one of these universes collided with one another. And when I say these universe, you say time, I'm looking at it as more as a universe that is behind us in time versus where we're at. Does that make sense to you, Mark, what I'm saying? Is that, you have a universe that's almost exactly like us, but the only difference between it is it's 100 years earlier.
That's a possibility. There's the idea that for every action, there is a choice to be made. Do you go left? Do you go right? Do you yin or you yang? And there's an idea that there are possibilities of, let's say you went left, but in another alternate universe, you went right.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused this branch, this split in the time stream continuum, space-time continuum, that there is a theory out there, and this one really, you want to have your mind boggled, this one, that there are infinite numbers of universes out there that are variations of ours right now.
Mm-hmm.
There was that old TV show, Sliders, that played with that idea. They were jumping into mirror universes of ours, but they all had something different in them. My partner Irene has at times been able to see these universes, and she has told me that she has dealt with multiple versions of me in other timelines.
Did you apologize for that?
Well, in one of them, she says I smoke, and I can't stand smoking. I've never smoked. And yet she says I smoke, and I go, well, tell me about the one where I'm rich and good looking. But even, are you familiar with Whitley Strieber?
Oh, yes.
Book Communion.
I was just thinking of that.
He had actually proposed in one of his books and also on his blogs on his website at Unknown Country. He's talked about, he does a lot of quantum meditation, and there are times where he's seen variations of himself in different timelines of he and his wife. There was one where they were very poor but happy, another one he was alone, she wasn't there, and he was miserable, and but it's all different versions of who we are.
Right.
And different possibilities. Now, I have enough trouble dealing with this timeline, not even worrying about there might be multiple versions of me out there. And to make things even wilder, I was an identical twin, so imagine that combination.
Wow.
It bends the mind to the point where you just want to, crawl up into a corner and whimper for a while. But there's really weird stuff that is out there that they're starting to look into. Even the pop star scientists, as I like to call them, like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Dr. Michio Kaku, they start talking about these types of concepts. And it's slowly starting to make its way into the mainstream. Most people still don't get it, but a few people are getting it. So when you start to look at the paranormal from some of these angles, it opens up a whole new universe of possibilities and ideas, things that we're dealing with. That's why in a lot of cases, and I'm going to sound very arrogant and conceited here, and I don't mean to sound that way, but I've considered a lot of the people that are in the paranormal field are still, if you equate it to being in school, I still think that they're down in second or third grade in elementary school, and I'm at least in high school or maybe early college level, because of breaking those boundaries and looking beyond the traditions of what we think we're dealing with. Most people still think you're dealing with ghosts and somebody died and they're floating around the house. And that's not to say that doesn't happen. It does happen. I've dealt with spirits, like at that mine. The gold mine that I investigated, I was dealing with the spirit of a miner there who had died. It happens. But it's not the only explanation for some of these things that we deal with. We were mentioning a little bit off in the break about my being here in Colorado. it's a very strange state. A lot of weird things happen here. There's whether it's because of vortexes or whatever, whatever's going on in this state, it has a mystical quality to it. In fact, I think the whole Southwest, the Four Corners area of the United States is steeped with a mystical quality, an otherworldly quality. And there's an area southwest of here called the San Luis Valley. And it's a UFO hotspot down there. People have had a lot of strange experiences and seen things down there. And at the end of July, I went down there with some friends. They have this place called the UFO Watchtower. It's in the middle of freaking nowhere, in this big valley. The valley floor is very deserty, where they have a lot of farms and cattle and whatnot, or it's just like plain. And this section is smack dab in the middle of the valley. And they built this platform, and they have people come there, and you could do camping and whatnot. And they had a little mini UFO convention there, and they had a lot of speakers. And then at night, people were out up on the tower and whatnot, UFO watching, because the sky is beautiful. You're up at about 6,000 feet. It's clear from horizon to horizon. It's great sky watching weather. And supposedly, people see UFOs. Dr. Stephen Greer, who's really big in the UFO community, he's done a lot of stuff out there. And so I went out there in the end of July for this camping weekend, and the first night we had a lot of rain. It's the monsoon season, so nothing happened. Second night we're out there, and I had something strange happen. I'm going to tell you right now, I still haven't seen a UFO, but man, I've seen something else that I'm scratching my head over. The first part was we were sitting out watching the sky. I was with some friends, and I'm watching the sky, and there's clouds, and you can still see the stars coming through. And as I'm watching this one patch of cloud, suddenly there is a superimposed image of a gray alien head face up in the clouds. Now, it wasn't looking at the clouds and having the pareidolia effect, like seeing clouds that look like dogs and cats and elephants or whatnot. It wasn't the cloud itself. This was an image that appeared over the cloud, crystal clear. The outlines were so sharp, it was not my imagination. My imagination's not that good. It's like the guy from Fantastic Beasts movie. They're like, I ain't got the imagination for this. And that's what appeared for about 5 or 6 seconds, clear as day. And then it was gone. And I turned and I looked at my friends. I go, did you guys see that? Nobody saw it but me. So I go, okay, I'm starting to question my sanity here. Was somebody smoking ganja nearby and I got a whiff? I don't know. So I'm looking at this analytically. And this is where I don't get freaked out. I don't get afraid, but I saw something I can't explain, and now I'm trying to explain it. Was it my imagination? No, my imagination has never given me anything that crystal clear. It was super sharp edged. So okay, I thought about that for a while. Later that night, everybody went to bed, but I was still kind of wired. So I was sitting out in my campsite all by myself till about midnight. Everyone else is abed. There's no lights. It's dark out, and I'm watching the sky for about an hour. And then at one point, I turned my head to look at the sky behind me, and just as I turned my head, I was looking at the campsite next to me where it was empty. Nobody was there. And all of a sudden, I saw this bright light, not out of the corner of my eye, head on, appear about 8 feet off the ground, about 15 feet away from me, and it just shot towards the ground in an arcing manner. The whole thing lasted less than half a second. But it was bright, and it shot down. I looked straight at this thing, and then it was gone. And I double-checked, and I'm going, did I see what I think I just saw? And no, I know I saw it. I saw it head on. It wasn't lights or reflection of anybody around me because there was nothing there. If I had to describe it, it was this burst of energy. Something happened in the atmosphere 15 feet away from me, just a few feet off the ground. It wasn't in the sky. It wasn't a UFO. It was a burst of energy. And I have absolutely no explanation for it. Can't even begin to fathom what it was I saw, other than an energy burst of some kind, something coming through from another dimension. Alien? I have no freaking idea. It just happened, and I'm always going to remember it, and I'm going to think about it. Very strange experience.
So let me ask you real quick. I'm sure you're familiar with the phenomenon of ball lightning. Any kind of comparison between that and what you experienced?
Ball lightning, from everything that I've read, which is also very rare, but everything I've read, it meanders around like a ball, and it's giving off sparks. People have smelled ozone coming with it because it's an electrical discharge that coalesces and moves around for a while before it disappears or goes out in a pop. It's almost like a form of static electricity. This wasn't static electricity. This was a burst of a light, of energy. It wasn't lightning, because I saw where it appeared right in front of me, coming down to the ground. It was a ball in movement, and it moved so fast that it caused a streak behind it. I'm not sitting here saying it's an alien type of thing. I'm not. I think it's some kind of natural force. It's a natural phenomenon that I don't understand. It wasn't lightning, but it was something. Very curious.
I wouldn't mind seeing something like that, as long as nothing else happened. I'm very paranoid.
Yeah, the little gray guys come over and they got this vibrating thing and they say bend over.
No.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very pleasant. And I shouldn't make fun because I do know several UFO contactees, abductees who've had similar experiences to that. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be in that situation.
No.
Definitely.
And I don't go looking for trouble, because I know if you do go looking for trouble, you'll find it. That's what I've always heard, anyway.
Well, is it trouble, or is it... I mean, at some point, and this is why us as researchers, we have an innate curiosity. And I know, like, just from my perspective alone, I want to know. I want to learn. I want to know what's going on. I mean, we could talk about several different types of phenomenon right now, besides even ghost hunting. I mean, if you look at the alien phenomenon, I think in a lot of ways we're once again, projecting our own ideas onto a phenomena that's way stranger than we give it credit for.
Right.
Or we think. Starting from the 1940s and 50s, when they start talking, Roswell was the big event, George Adamski's experiences, and people seeing flying saucers, and then how that evolved and developed over the years. And it's always, you get people like MUFON, who they come at it from a very scientific, analytic angle, thinking that you're dealing with nuts and bolts spaceships built by aliens from another planet in our galaxy. That is not quite the case in what I've discovered in research, interviewing many, many different eyewitnesses and experiencers. I think it's a lot stranger than that. And I mentioned Whitley Strieber previously. I've interviewed Whitley. I've read his books. I don't necessarily agree with him 100% because he's coming at it from his own perspective. And he agrees he doesn't know what these things are, but he has come to a lot of conclusions, things that really struck home to me and woke me up in many different ways, especially that these things are more multidimensional and or spiritual than we want to admit. Whitley Strieber has mentioned that in several of his encounters, he's met people who are dead. And he didn't know. And one time he met an old friend during one of those encounters, and he had no idea the guy had died the month before. How these beings, as a perfect example, the Greys. okay, that are always described as being very stiff, robotic, no motion, and yet they seem like they're almost not alive sometimes. And I remember many years ago when I was reading one of Whitley's follow-ups to Communion, I think it was Transformation, he had mentioned where he was taken aboard a craft, and they were excited to show him something, and they pulled out a drawer out of the side of the ship, and stacked in this drawer under plastic were gray alien bodies. And he didn't seem to understand what that meant at the time, but they seemed excited about showing it to him. And over years, I started to realize that half the time, I think these things are using these bodies to interact in our dimension, because we're here in a physical dimension. They're not from this physical dimension. They have difficulty working around and dealing in the physical dimension, so they've developed, whether you want to call it like a biomechanical suit or something that they go into in order to, it's like a deep sea diver or an astronaut wearing a spacesuit in order to work in a hostile environment, so otherwise that they couldn't work in. I think that we're dealing with something that could be very similar to that, which is why with the UFO phenomenon, so many times abductees, they mention it feels like they're not even in our reality anymore. They're operating in a different reality.
Wow. Well, hold that thought, Mark. We're at the top of the hour, and I didn't want to interrupt you because it's just fascinating subject matter, and I want to pick that up when we come back. Before we go, a lot of the music that is played here on Spaceboy Universe is written by yours truly, Spaceboy. And there is a website to go to pick up some of your own space swag, and that's spaceboymusic.com. In fact, the latest album that I have out is called Unique Technique, and it features 17 different tracks that you can bug out to and enjoy. And for a measly just $10, you can get all those 17 tracks for that amount. So head on over to spaceboymusic.com, get that album, and plus there's other music there you can check out and get your copies today. So we'll be right back after this.
Body Machino.
Чи за неделю вы собираетесь к трапу?
Machino.
And we're back here at the SBU. I'm Spaceboy, and what's your name over there, dear?
Well, I'm going by Surlana,
Oh,
for all that you know.
Okay, and on the phone lines is the impressive Mark Johnson. And so when we last left, we were talking about Whitley Strieber, but we also, once again, got into a conversation about Travis Walton and just many different cases out there that I guess pepper the universe. And did you want to say anything about Travis Walton in that case?
Well, I've met Travis. Hell of a nice guy. Like him a lot. And the one thing with Travis's story, he tells about the one event that happened in 1974, which they made the movie Fire in the Sky based on his experience. For anybody who's seen the movie, the movie itself does a pretty good job of explaining what happened to everybody and all the other loggers. But when it came to what happened on the spaceship was total baloney because Hollywood made it up. They didn't follow Travis's story at all, which was, I think they thought it was too weird and nobody would believe it. And it was more positive than negative, and they wanted to sell the fear, so they made it all scary and negative.
And it is scary.
But he had interacted. Well, the movie is scary,
yeah,
but the truth is he interacted with several different types of beings, including the tall humanoid ones that some people call Nordics.
The Nordics, yes.
He wandered around the ship and saw this big view screen and these star charts, and then later the ship wound up, I think, in like a big hangar in an even way bigger mothership where all these other ships were before. And they think that what happened with Travis is when they saw the UFO, he immediately jumped out, and they're screaming at him to get back in the truck, but he wanted to get a better look at it. He got too close, and I think he got hit with an electrical static discharge from the vehicle. It was an accident.
Yeah.
And it may have even killed him and stopped his heart or whatever. The guys freaked and they hit the gas and they flew out of there. And then when they turned around to go back for him, he was gone. I think what happened is he was either hurt or killed, and they brought him aboard the ship and fixed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was gone for 5 days before he reappeared. Now, that's the story he tells. And it's a compelling story, and he's been going around the lecture circuit for years and appearing on television shows and retelling the story. But in my experience, and I've had this confirmed from some other people, most UFO experiencers, even if it seems like they had the one experience, turns out that they've really had lifetimes of experience before and after the event. And I've always suspected that more has happened to Travis than he's ever told publicly. In private, I've had some people tell me I'm on the right track with that, but if he's not willing to talk about it, I'll respect the man's privacy. But, if you go back to even in the 60s, there's the first famous abduction case, the Betty and Barney Hill case. They were driving back from Connecticut from a trip. Along the road, they saw this UFO. They stopped. They were escorted out of UFO, examined, and that's where the first public case of them taking biological material, including semen and eggs, that looks like for that hybrid program that these things seem to be working on, before they were put back, and then they had most of that experience wiped from their minds. It wasn't until they went into hypnotic regression later that they recalled everything. But it also came out much later when their daughter, Kathleen Martin, who had wrote a book with Stanton Friedman, the nuclear physicist who's written a lot about, and they even start to mention in there that they actually, especially Betty, had encounters after that fact, and maybe even before. And it turns out that's the one incident that everybody remembers and that they remembered and became an international sensation, but more happened to them. Now, I'll tell you another funny story is are you aware of Stan Romanek?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
we're very familiar with him.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know Stan and Lisa. They actually live an hour or so north of me. And I know he's very controversial right now for a number of reasons. I have my reasons to still believe in them because I've known them personally. And I know a lot what's going on. A lot of people have disassociated, saying he's a fake, he's a fraud, and whatnot. And it's not exactly the case. But I'm just going to leave it at that. Whether you love him or hate him, that's up to everybody's individual beliefs. But, there is a story that he told in one of his books a long time ago, and we talked about this in person, and when he talked to me about it in person, there was a revelation in here where on one of his abduction experiences, he was wearing a T-shirt when he went to bed, and they abducted him. When he came back, he was wearing a woman's nightshirt. And he was wondering, like, how in the hell did I get this wearing it? Well, it was a woman's nightshirt. Now, the funny thing about it, which I think this is hysterical, is he was wearing a T-shirt that had a saying on it that said, "I was abducted and all I got was this lousy T-shirt."
Yes,
we're familiar.
So can you imagine waking up and whoever they switched clothes with him and somebody else? Can you imagine being that woman waking up one morning and you're wearing that T-shirt? Now here's the thing that is not as widely known. We were talking about it. They had a chance. He had talked with Betty Hill before she passed away, and turns out she had an abduction experience, and turns out she was the one who had the T-shirt. Something happened where Betty Hill was involved in Stan Romanek's thing, and it was her nightshirt that he was wearing. And he talked with Kathleen Martin about it and described the nightshirt. I don't know if he still had it or not, or showed it to her, and she confirmed that was her mother's nightshirt. So think about that. That's kind of weird.
We'd heard that story. In fact, do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, basically, we had did a show last year in November on Stan Romanek, and it's just a fascinating story.
Because I had read all their books they had out at the time.
And so we pretty much did the show, and then, somebody, I guess, talked to Lisa, and she ended up in our chat room, which was cool, and, interacting with our space cadets. And then the last few minutes of the show, Stan calls in, and we got to talk to him, and it was quite exciting moment to be able to talk to him. And we reassured Stan, look, Stan, you can take the whole picture and take some of the stuff away, and you start boiling away certain parts of your story. There's still parts of your story that, for us, it just goes to, I have to believe in you, because it just doesn't. I don't see you faking this. You just don't come across as.
Why would you bring that upon yourself and your family?
Yeah, exactly.
For so many years.
Yeah, let alone the.
And they haven't gotten anything out of it.
The big court case over his current situation,
which I think is a big setup.
Yeah. So.
I think so too. It's meant to discredit him, and it's worked, because major players in MUFON and the UFO community. He's a leper to them now. They won't touch him. They've effectively destroyed his credibility and his life. And people think, he wrote books. He's making money. They have no money. They're destitute.
Yeah,
he admitted in a recent interview they're on food stamps.
They took the books off the market too.
Yeah. So what is he gaining from this? He's had nothing but grief. And, you have a government and a corrupt local police department that getting involved, they want to nail a celebrity. And gee, who tipped off the local police department? Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
Homeland Security did it. Government agency did it. So, what's the best way to make somebody an instant pariah in society? Accuse them of of being a pedophile. And all you have to do is accuse them, and everybody turns against them. And you know what? I've stuck by Stan and Lisa because I believe their story, because of the evidence itself. Stan is a human being, and he has made mistakes like all of us has made. Okay? And he's done some things that I think he shouldn't have done. That's just my opinion. But the overwhelming evidence of what comes from their case, especially the fact that there have been multiple witnesses when things happen, so it's not just his word. But what intrigues me most were the drawings, the mathematical equations that he would go into trance and come out with. And even when I first saw them in the book, I was looking at them, and I never got past algebra in college, so I don't know anything about it. But what got me instantly, when I was looking at the diagrams, two things in there, I instantly knew that it was about folding space, faster than light travel, in creating a wormhole to travel through to fold space, where they had the straight line with the two balls, and then below it, that same line curved in and the two balls almost touching. And that goes right into the concept, that brilliant movie with Matthew McConaughey, Interstellar, which they actually worked with real theoretical scientists talking about to try to make it as technically and scientifically accurate as possible in explaining traveling through these wormholes to go from point A to point B instantly, rather than, that the regular scientists say, well, if there's alien life out there, it's too far away, they'll never find us. Well, yeah, conventional, ships that don't go faster than light, yeah, it'll take thousands or millions of years to get here. But if there is that way to fold space, create a wormhole that connects 2 points in space with an instant access, and that is theoretically possible. And his equations focused on that, and they sent them out to these physicists, these guys looking at it, and they're going, this is beyond even what we can do. They see some things in there that they recognize, but at the end result, they knew it was about a type of propulsion, but they were still trying to figure it out. Now, how can a guy with an 8th grade math level, who's also dyslexic, draw that? And it being not total gibberish. It's actually something that mathematicians and scientists can figure out.
Wonder why they gave him those equations. You think they're saying, here's who we are and here's how we did it, just so you know we're legitimate, the aliens, I mean.
I think that what we're looking at, not only with Stan, but other contactees around the world, some big names, some you've never heard of, I think this is the way that they choose to interact with us. God knows they try interacting with their government, we shoot them down. That it's a shoot first, ask questions later policy. And instead, I think that they've taken it to the people to slowly educate and bring stuff in. I think they have a non-interference policy for the most part. That's why they wipe people's memories. But they're planting seeds and planting things in here to help bring our awareness up. And this is where it gets really strange, because I feel that they're working on a higher dimensional level, even almost on a spiritual level, to work with us rather than the pure physical. Because I think that many of these types of beings are not physical. They are from other dimensions. And maybe that's how they even get here. Are we dealing with something from another planet in Zeta Reticuli, or are we dealing with something that's living in a reality just beyond our reach? We really don't know. So it's really hard to say. And the fact that it's clear that we are dealing with multiple types of visitors with differing agendas. And some of the beings who are here do not seem to have our best interests at heart. There are tales of many of these beings directly interacting with the U.S. military exchanging technology for their own purposes, I believe we have our secret space program. I think that's why we don't have a space program anymore. They're not wasting the time and money on it. They're developing, there's all this money that goes into black ops. Look at 9/11. The day before 9/11, Rumsfeld comes out and says, yeah, there's like $2.3 trillion that we can't account for. Next day, boom, we have 9/11. No, everybody forgets about it. And I think what happens is so much of it goes into these black ops programs, the secret space program. And there are so many people who used to work for Lockheed Skunk Works, these other military contractors who have come out and flat out said that we have the technology now to take ET home.
Right.
And whatever you can imagine, we have it. Now, they keep us dumb because they don't want anybody else to have it but them. They're selfishly guarding this technology. They are able to do things that the public can't. They let NASA continue, and I'm going to tell you something. NASA and most of the scientists and people who work at NASA honestly believe in what they're doing, but they don't understand that it's a smokescreen. NASA is not needed. This talk about us going to Mars. We've already been to Mars.
Yeah, that's
we're already
right here.
there. Why did we stop going to the moon? They just blew it off. And now they come out and say, now it's a popular theory, this disinformation theory they're throwing out there now. There are so many people out there who think the moon landings were faked, which as a filmmaker myself and a space geek, and I'm good at analyzing footage, 90% of the footage that we saw that they brought back from the moon is absolutely real, for a number of different reasons that I could go over in analyzing it. Do I think that they maybe shot something for the first one? Oh, yeah. Because of how grainy the television set was. I think they did it as a backup just in case if something went wrong. They could say, hey, we did, just to say they had something over the Russians. But I don't believe the moon landings were faked. But I do believe we stopped going there for specific reasons. And now there are astronauts, guys with impeccable credibility. Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon. Dr. Edgar Mitchell. These guys have all come out and said, yes, we were not alone on the moon. There were other beings up there. And you hear crickets in the media and everywhere else. Nobody pays attention to them except lunatics like us. We believe them, but the regular public, nobody cares, nobody knows. That's how they've effectively dumbed everybody down. Distract them. Hey, we got a new iPhone coming out. Go play with the pretty toy. It'll distract you. In the meantime, they have all these other things going on that would blow us away if we knew the full truth. And like I said, as a space junkie myself and a total space geek, I really wish to God we knew about this technology. I would love to go to Mars. I actually watched The Martian again the other day. Such a wonderful movie.
That's a good movie.
And,
definitely a good movie.
Yeah, I love Mars. I've always been attracted to go to Mars. And yet, when you hear about some of the other programs that have gone on, have you ever had a chance to interview Andrew DiBasciago?
We would love to. I don't know how you actually contact him to get his attention.
I'll put you in touch with him.
Cool.
He's definitely somebody you want to talk to.
I have been dying to talk to him.
He's somebody you want. Andrew, look, I've interviewed him twice for my old show, and I'm going to tell you right now, either what he's saying is real, or he is without a doubt the best pathological liar I've ever met.
He's so committed to it. He never changes the story.
That's what impresses me. His story never changes. And pathological liars always tend to add a little bit more, embellish it a little bit more, and stretch it out. Now, he could say he has the script and sticks to it, but he also has other people that have come forward and backed up his story. William Whitecrow, who's part of it.
Was it Eisenhower?
There was
Laura Eisenhower?
Not Eisenhower.
What's her
Paul
name?
Hellyer is it one to do? There was a military person who came out and backed it up. I forget his name off the top of my head, but he was part of these time travel experiments.
The jump room.
In this jump room in the 70s, and then the Mars technology in the early 80s, and all stemming out from the MK Ultra program, which existed. It's a fact. MK Ultra was real, and I think what they were doing and the experiments that they were putting on these young people. There's also Christopher Garetano. He did a documentary called The Montauk Chronicles.
Yes, we've interviewed him.
Which really went in. Yes. And what our government has done with kidnapping children off the streets and putting them through these mind control programs and all of these other experiments. And then what Andrew Basiago, whose father was in the military and brought him in to this program as a child, first for the time travel experiments and the teleportation. And if anything, I'll vote for Andrew D. Basiago to be president next time because I want a teleporter in every home.
Yeah. Whether his story is true or not, it is a freaking awesome story. I just like it as a story. It needs to be a movie.
Well, you know what? If it's real, what does that tell you about what an illusion our society is? What we are,
it's the Matrix.
What we concern ourselves about every day. It is like living in the Matrix. I mean, look, flying has become such a chore. I hate to fly anymore.
We don't do
the airlines suck. They overcharge you. They nickel and dime you, and it's a terrible experience. And yet here we supposedly have technology where he steps into a teleporter in New Mexico and suddenly appears in Moorestown, New Jersey. Okay, in the blink of an eye. And what that would mean for travel anywhere in this country and in this world and the planet, what it could mean for us. All of these technologies that are suppressed. And traveling the solar system, traveling beyond our solar system, in the blink of an eye. If all of this is possible, again, imagine the possibilities of where we could go as a civilization. And yet, if it's true, it's being jealously guarded by an elite few.
Yes, yeah,
who looks at us as cattle.
Yeah, we did our last show last Saturday was on the shadow government. So, I mean, you preach into the choir here. So we totally believe, like the CIA is the head of it, which is run by the Council of Foreign Relations. All the alphabet soups, reluctantly kind of work together to our controls of the deep state, for their agendas, to line their pockets, to keep them safe and secure when, they're trying to get us to be little happy worker drones and to have less of us so we're easier to control, so we'll be completely dependent on them and they'll be our saviors. So, and we won't shut up about it. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And unfortunately, there are people out there like you and me who are going to upset those plans because we're not going to play. We're not going to play along.
And we're called tinfoil hat wearing weirdos for it.
Oh yeah, we're total nutcases to the general public. Most of what we've talked about here tonight, you go to talk to the man on the street about it, he'll look at you like you've got 3 heads. And they're more concerned about impeaching Trump than they are taking a look at, hey, what is really going on behind the scenes in our society? And I'm of the mind that it doesn't matter who the hell the president is.
That's what we talked about too. He's not in charge.
Yeah, he's not in charge. Jimmy Carter had come out and publicly stated the fact that when he tried to find out about what was really going on with the aliens, because he's seen UFOs.
Yeah,
Reagan saw UFOs. And Jimmy got bitch slapped and told to shut up and mind his own business. You don't need to know. And who told him that?
It was
George Herbert Walker Bush, the head of the CIA.
As he was going out, yeah.
So, again, these temporary figureheads, you get people in there like a Trump, whether you hate him or love him or whatever, it doesn't really matter. He's an average citizen going in there and thinking he thinks he's gonna do a job and make a difference. He doesn't run anything. He's pissing off all the other the power elite who think they want to run everything, and they don't even run everything. It is a shadow government. It is this whether you want to call them the Illuminati or whatever the hell they really are, they're the ones really in charge, not the politicians. The politicians are just paid off. They're bought off and do as they're told by corporations, by good Lord. I know we kind of strayed into some weird territory here, and you guys are probably ready for the break.
No, it's all good, and we're due for the bottom of the hour break. But we'll take the break. It's our final break of the hour, and when we return, I know that Surlana's got a few more that she wants to squeeze in.
Things,
and so it's all good in the neighborhood because you're listening to Spaceboy Universe, and we'll be right back after this.
Okay, Mark, we'll get back to the meat and potatoes of why you're here. So,
yep. Ask questions. I know I've been rambling, so fire away.
Well, you said you've broadened your research topics, subject matters, and you're saying you're finding more interconnectedness than you had previously. So that intrigued me. And one of the things that in recent years, my whole life I'd heard about Bigfoot. Who hasn't heard about Bigfoot? And I'm like, yeah, whatever, And being from Northwest Louisiana, we have our own little folklores, and, we're not too far from PAUK, Arkansas, the PAUK Monster, Boggy Creek, etc. And, I never really thought much about it. I've never, cared. But something that intrigued me with more recent years as I've heard more about, Bigfoot and the phenomenon is the fact that what if Bigfoot is not of this world? What if it is an alien species that comes and go or is controlled by aliens? Or and the reason I say this because I heard a story about a man who was like fly fishing or somewhere and happened to look up across the bank, across the river, and he saw a Bigfoot-like creature being helped along some rough terrain by a tall gray alien in a white robe who was holding the Bigfoot's hand. And I'm like, oh, that, I don't know if that's real, that's freaky, but what say you on that type of thing?
Okay, well, I've always been fascinated with Bigfoot as a kid. I took a trip went up through Oregon when I was a kid and picked up John Green's books, Hunt for the Sasquatch, and learning all about Bigfoot and Sasquatch. And, I'm right up there with, wanting to go out. I know that there's some local Bigfoots around where I live, too, so I would love to go out and go and do some investigating and try to find them. I am firmly of the opinion, and I go against a lot of Bigfoot hunters who say that Bigfoot is just an undiscovered great ape, an American great ape. I don't believe that for a heartbeat. If it was a great ape, we would have found it by now. And I think what we're dealing with is a very intelligent species, a very human-like species that has the ability to come in and out of this dimension. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason why people have seen them disappear right in front of them, how they seem to be the hide-and-seek champion of the world.
Exactly.
Nobody seems to find them, which is, which the debunker's saying, well, it's easy because they don't exist. Yeah, until you see one. And I know I have a lot of friends who've seen them. I have a friend, Tim Stover, in Ohio, is with Ohio Bigfoot Hunters. He saw one when he was in a deer stand 20 years ago, standing 40 feet away from him. And he's been searching for it again ever since. And he's had, he's one of the ones who believe it's just a physical animal, but he's had some weird experiences, too, in the woods while looking for it. People who talk about seeing Bigfoots with UFOs. Now, they sound like tinfoil hat wearing nutsos, but people report it. So are they aliens? Are they interacting with aliens? I don't know. But I think based on a lot of what these things are capable of doing, of staying hidden, of disappearing at times, having almost a paranormal quality about them, I think that they have an interdimensional aspect to them where they're able to move in and out of our reality. There's a guy out of Ontario, Canada, Mike, I'm forgetting his last name. I'm going to kick myself for this. He had a YouTube channel called Sasquatch Ontario. It's still up, and you can go and see a lot of his videos. He spent 2 years on a private property in Ontario, Canada, where they were having direct interactions with several Bigfoot creatures. He recorded this audio of speech that these things were communicating with them, not only in their own language, but were learning words in English. The sounds are very low and different from human language in the fact that half the time these things seem to be communicating while they're inhaling as well as exhaling. When we talk, we're exhaling. But if you try to talk while you're inhaling and it gets that weird sound, these things were doing that. They also could do a lot of paranormal things, like tap you on the shoulder and you turn around, there's nobody there. Footprints literally appearing in front of you that weren't there a second ago. But, there's no creature walked by you, but there they are. Objects, marbles and things appearing out of nowhere. There's a lot of paranormal qualities to them. And I think that those paranormal qualities fall into some of the other creatures that we were talking about earlier in the program. These things have an ability they're not 100% of this reality. I think they can come into this reality. They can live partially here, but I think they also go elsewhere. One of the more intriguing things that would happen is they would have cameras that would take, suddenly exposures would appear on a camera when no pictures were taken. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it would even happen in the guy's house on the property. They'd be in house on the kitchen table, the camera would be there on the kitchen table, and next thing they knew, there were 6 new exposures taken, 6 new pictures taken on the camera that nobody touched the camera. When they reviewed the pictures, their date stamped. It's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and yet the picture showed the woods in bright daylight outside. But yet there was like a screen-like aspect over, like you're shooting through a screen out a window. It didn't look quite right, but yet it was bright daylight. Yet when the pictures were taken, they even time-stepped at 1 in the morning in the middle of the night. So could it be like it was taken through this other reality?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to tell. It's wild. It really is wild, but I do believe that Bigfoot creatures do interact. They have those types of qualities where they can mask themselves, cloak themselves. Even Irene in the UK, she has had a couple of experiences in her garden 5 years apart where she saw 2 creatures that were cloaked like in Predator, like in the movie Predator.
Oh, wow.
She could see the outlines. They shimmered. They were moving in her backyard, and she watched one of them was turned and walked towards her, and she said the outline of it was massive, and she didn't realize it at the time. It's when we were talking about it later, it actually was bulky, kind of like a Bigfoot, humanoid type creature. But it walked right up to her, and at that point she like raised her hand to say, like, that's far enough, mate. It stopped in its tracks, and then it didn't turn around. It started backing up, and then it went back with the other one, and then they just disappeared. And then 5 years later, she was out walking her dogs in the garden, and there she saw it again. And it was, this time it was bigger, but she had the impression it was the same one. It had grown bigger. It was young the first time, and now it was much bigger. And it walked up to her again, and it got between her and her dogs kind of cowered in the background and wouldn't come near the thing. And all of a sudden, she felt like she was downloaded with information.
Ooh.
She doesn't know what happened. It felt like an information download. And then suddenly the thing was gone. And then the dogs would come into the house. And we started doing some research, and she realized that, in fact, when we're now coming up on the time of year, it happens in the fall, she hears Bigfoot-like howls and screams coming from the mountains a few miles away from her property. And there have been reports of a so-called Welsh Bigfoot. We call it the Trey Moore,
Mm-hmm.
which is Welsh for Bigfoot. So yeah, there's, again, it's there are stories where these things have very, very mystical or metaphysical type
But
properties.
they're all, these stories are all over the world. So how can these beings be everywhere? You know, but not be.
People are everywhere, aren't they?
Well, I mean, you know, how do we not have the hardcore evidence if there's so many?
Well, we don't have the hardcore evidence because they do their best to avoid us.
You're saying because
What do we
they're
do?
good at it.
Well, again, he's not the hide-and-seek champion of the world for nothing. He also, they are intelligent, and they're intelligent enough to know to stay the hell away from people in most cases, because what do we want to do? Shoot them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a show out there, Finding Bigfoot. I mean, no, Killing Bigfoot. Killing Bigfoot. And they want to kill a Bigfoot and drag it in to show the world that it exists. Okay, you want to kill an intelligent, sentient being just to prove it exists. Why the hell do you think they stay away from us? You know, even my ultimate guilty pleasure show, I love this show, even though it is so wrong, Mountain Monsters.
I've heard of that.
Love Mountain Monsters. Oh my God, it is so entertaining. It's not funny, and yet it's the same thing. You got these guys, these hillbillies running around the woods with guns. Let's go get that son of a bitch, and they're always putting a negative connotation on it. Like it's terrorizing people. It's the show, okay? It's television. It's entertainment.
Yeah,
but.
Again, just for a split second, it reminds me of the story from Art Bell when he was on the air on Coast to Coast when he was talking to a guy named Bugs who had shot 2 Bigfoot. And did you ever recall that story or hear about that story?
Vaguely.
Yeah, well,
Vaguely, yeah.
It was a fascinating story because, apparently Bugs was pretty emotional about it and left Art a map to where they were buried, but I guess they never, Art promised that he would never tell where they were buried or, unless he got permission from Bugs himself. And to this very day, I don't think Art has released that information as of yet. And it was a fascinating story. If you get a chance to look through any kind of archives or pull up any shows on that, please do. I mean, it is quite interesting.
There's a very famous story that goes back to 1924 in Oregon, what's now known as Ape Canyon, where there are these miners that were out and they came across a Bigfoot. They shot it, and it ran. It was hurt. It ran, and it fell over the cliff into the canyon, which is Ape Canyon. That's how it got its name. So they killed a Bigfoot. They went back to their cabin that night, and suddenly they were attacked by several of these things trying to break into the cabin all night long, throwing rocks down on it, banging into the door. They were shooting through the roof, shooting through the walls. It was a all-night standoff with these creatures, and they were pissed. These miners shot one of theirs, and they were angry and were coming for payback.
Oh yeah.
And again, this is why. There was I heard somebody afterwards when the next morning they got out of there, and somebody had went back up to that cabin at one point and saw all the rocks everywhere and the damage, and which kind of validated their story. But again, that's why these things they're first of all, not very many people see them except by accident if they're crossing a road or in the woods, or sometimes you'll get one that's curious and following somebody in the woods. And but most of the time they're very hard to see, and very few people have an encounter with them. Even my friend Tim, when he had his encounter, he was up in a tree stand and it didn't see him. He just happened to turn and look to his right, and there it was standing about 40 yards away from him, but he was up in the tree, and the thing was looking around, and he watched it for about a minute, and then it turned, and he thought, is this a guy in a suit? And then when it turned and started to walk off, he saw the movement. He saw the muscles under the skin, and he realized right away, this is a real thing. And so it was an accident. It didn't know he was there, and he just happened to catch it. So I think that's how a lot of the encounters happen. Occasionally, I think that somebody with the right frame of mind, the right intent, can meet these things or have a relationship with these things, which I also think have a psychic ability too. They can tell your intentions. So some people will have some positive encounters. I know people who've had negative encounters, but it's like everything else. I think you don't see a Bigfoot and assume it's going to be friendly. They're like people. You can have some that are grumpy or they don't want anything to do with you, or they could be nasty, and you have some that are more positive. It's like anything else in this world. So, but yeah, I believe that there's a lot of different types of aspects to them that we would consider to be paranormal.
Wow. So, Mark, we're slowly approaching the
And I
the
still have
end of the
tons more
program.
I could ask him.
Well, I just want to make sure that he has enough time,
Roger.
to do the plugging and all that good stuff. So, why don't you go ahead and plug, and then I guess Surlana can do a follow up behind after you plug all your social media and all that good stuff.
Okay. I'll try to make this real quick. We have our radio show, which is on Wednesday nights on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.com. Our show is Paranormal UK Radio. We also have other shows on our network. But Irene and I, we do our show every week. We pretty much like yours. We talk to people, have a good time. We also have our paranormal website, which is srinstitute.net, which is for Supernatural Research Institute. And we have some of our latest cases posted there. We also have our own publishing company, Glanet Ty Publishing. You can go to Glanet Ty, GLANNANTTY.com. And most of our books are on a paranormal or metaphysical kind of slant. And we're on Facebook, social media. There's a lot we're into, so you can always look us up and say hi.
Cool. All right, Surlana, you have some final questions for our wonderful guest tonight?
Well, we were talking about the Bigfoot and the way, maybe they're using portals interdimensional. I don't know if you're familiar with a gentleman, David Paulides, if I'm saying his name right, where he talks about missing 401 in Canada, America. And I'm getting to wonder, these people disappear without a physical trace in most cases. And I'm kind of wondering if it's tied to this notion of interdimensional travel. Is it Bigfoot? One little girl said a big hairy man took her brother to go play. And in some cases, these people or children are coming back, mangled, or it's just a bone that's left. Very disturbing stuff. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Fascinating subject, really is. Actually, our guest last week, we talked with Steph Young from the UK, who, like David, has been looking into and written a lot of books on this. And there's some, so many millions of people go missing every year, and it's amazing that we never hear about it, especially in our national parks. There's stories of, there'll be a few people together hiking, and literally there's a person walking behind them, and then they turn around and look back, and then the person's gone, never to be found again, or to be found dead miles away on top of a mountain somewhere. Or there's a toddler who went missing, and they found the toddler 5 miles away up on a rocky peak. There's no way in hell a 5-year-old could have climbed up there.
The same goes on in the UK as well?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
In the UK, all around the world, this is a phenomenon that's not just devoted to the U.S. Now, I do believe people go missing, even in the U.S., for a lot of different reasons. You have human trafficking, which is horrible, especially young women, even young men. There are stories involving that. But the ones that involve the national parks and other more remote areas, there's such an amount of high strangeness with it that it's hard to tell. It could be somebody hits the right conditions, they hit a time portal, they wind up somewhere else, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. Maybe something like a Bigfoot or whatnot that is cloaked snatches them. I don't know. And this is all just theoretical. Maybe we don't know what's happening. There was a case that happened, I believe it was in Pennsylvania, this Todd Seas case, where this guy, he had disappeared. He went out on his motorbike, disappeared, and they found him several days later, but he was in an area that they had previously searched, and he wasn't there. Then they found him, and his body he'd been dead for a while, but his body was not decomposed. The bugs and everything wasn't touching him. And there was such an amount of high strangeness surrounding his body, they kind of look at it as a UFO case or an alien case, like maybe he was abducted. And they did a toxicology report, and he had supposedly so much cocaine in his system, it would have killed a horse. But let alone let alone somebody. How could a human being ingest that much without dropping dead, and being way out in a location that they had previously searched, and then he just showed up? So many unanswered questions with what happened to that. Did somebody take him? Did he hit a portal? Why was there drugs in his system? Unless maybe they were put there after the fact to make it seem like it was just a simple drug case to try to throw people off the scent.
Exactly.
And, you know, I also don't put some of these disappearances past our own government. They've done it before with MK Ultra and other programs. It's easy to snatch somebody in the woods. And let's face it, where are some of these bases, these secret bases we have? In mountains, in forests, away from the public? You know, maybe there are bases in our national... Yes, underground bases like the Dulce base in New Mexico, and that's the ones we know of. There may be bases elsewhere that we don't know about, and maybe they'll snatch somebody occasionally and just blame it on, it's a lost hiker, and then they're able to conduct experiments. I think there's some really evil crap going on right under our nose.
Exactly. And beyond what we can imagine, terrifying.
Indeed.
And to think that it's Americans doing it to Americans, that seems abhorrent.
No regard for our life or our freedom, yes. Exactly.
Well, you know, when they brought the Nazis over here under Project Paperclip after World War II, it wasn't just the rocketry program they were using them for. You know, Werner von Braun and all of that team, you know, they were Nazis, but forget about it. They're helping us with NASA and our space program. But they brought over the other ones, too, the ones that worked in the concentration camps, the Dr. Mengeles. You know, they never caught him. Well, maybe it's because maybe he was here working in one of our programs.
I hear that's where we get the idea for a lot of the MK Ultra project was from those Nazis that were brought over.
Yep. Because they were doing all this mind control stuff and all these experiments. And you know what? The Russians were doing it too, to their own people. All these countries had their own programs. It didn't stop with Nazi Germany. And the U.S. has been involved with some horrible programs that are out there. You know, look at the Tuskegee experiments where they were infecting black men with syphilis for like almost 40 years. And you can't sit there and tell me our government would not do that to us, because they have, and it's on record.
Yes, they're very capable of doing such things. Well, Mark, I hate to cut it off here, but you know we've reached the bottom of the hour. I mean, the top of the hour and the end of the show. Can you hold on until we close out, and we'll just talk to you after a little bit and wrap things up with you?
Sure.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I've really had a good time today.
Yeah, we've
always
enjoyed
end up having a good time.
Oh yeah, I mean when it goes like that, you know, it's been a great show. So yes, I'm just glad that you're a part of the universe, and you know, at some time we'll get you back on the show, and we'll talk more stuff for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, Surlana, great night. So final thoughts as we go is that, as always, I try to remind you that always take your best step and make your way into the future, and things will work out for the best. And on that magical note, say goodnight, Surlana.
Spaceboy Universe is hosted by Spaceboy and Surlana. Executive producer is Surlana. Social media producer is Dennis Koch. Associate producer is Lee Ann Cordes. Music production is Spaceboy of SpaceboyMusic.com. Special thanks goes out to Lee Ann K, K28, Mark S, and Bob N. This has been a Spaceboy Universe production. Support the universe by exploring Spaceboy Universe with Spaceboy and Surlana. Sweet dreams, Space Cadets.